Dr. O'Leary is a teaching and research academic in the School of the Natural and Built Environments at University of South Australia. He holds a Master's of Architecture from UNISA, as well as a PhD in the area of sustainable energy engineering of buildings. And he'll be talking a little bit more about his research, but a lot of his research papers has focused on the residential energy efficiency and then introduction of more stringent energy performance requirements and energy disclosure mechanisms for buildings. So please welcome Timothy, and I'll get this all fired up for you.
We've got a house here, and looks pretty new. It's got A on it, it's a label. And what we're trying to talk about here is how do we put a label on a house in terms of how it performs in an energy context. On my presentation, we'll sort of talk about how things are done in different places and maybe how we can do it better. But in Europe, they've had mandatory disclosure of energy performance of homes for over a decade. So you buy or rent a house, you get a label. You get some idea of what it is, how it's performing. The European Union has done this, and in different ways, countries have implemented in slightly different ways, with different metrics, different methodologies. I won't bore you, I can't spend time going into the detail. Beyond the star rating, and they don't have what we have in here in terms of our new homes here. We have a star rating. They have a sort of A to G system. If you're a G, you're performing very poorly. If you're A or A star, you're doing very well. What an energy performance certificate looks like in the UK is a measure of the expected sort of energy intensity of the home. So an energy performance certificate is something you will get if you buy a home or you rent a home. You'll see what it is, and the rating is, there for you. It's disclosed. It'll be done by someone who's qualified, an assessor that can actually understand how to analyze and assess the performance of the house. In terms of energy use, it covers that. It also covers water use and other sustainability features. And in fact, with an energy performance certificate, there's also an environmental certificate where we look at the carbon intensity of the house. We look at not just the energy use, but the fuel we're using to produce that energy. So with an energy performance certificate also, we look at potential to reduce the cost associated with running the house in terms of energy. So there'll be some information to a purchaser or a renter, how could we better save money on the energy use of the home. So that's the sort of idea of an energy performance certificate or disclosure of the energy performance of a house. What do we do here in Australia? We've got an old house. Now we've got about over 10 million dwellings, and about 9 million of them were built before the introduction of minimum energy performance standards. So I've talked about this, and I know in other presentations, we've looked at the older housing stock, 9 million homes. There's a big stock out there, and some of it is very poorly performing in terms of energy. We've talked about things like leaky homes, and so forth, and homes with no insulation. And despite a lot of good intentions by governments in terms of green loan schemes to upgrade houses and insulation programs with problems, we still have the problem. There are many homes that are poorly performing. What kind of label would you put on this home? Would you even rent or live in it? Now in South Australia, I don't know if you ever wander along on a Saturday to an open inspection, you might see a few pieces of paper on the table, the coffee's brewing, the baking thing, and you love the home, and then there'll be a glossy brochure. But there is a requirement in South Australia to have what's called a Form 3. It's called buyer information notice. What information is there? Well, it really depends on you asking the question that's on the form. Whether you get a response that's meaningful and gives you the information is another thing. Really, it's about telling people, why don't you ask the real estate agent, or ask the real estate agent, ask the owner, how energy efficient is the home, including appliances and lighting, and what are the energy sources? For you and me, that's a no-brainer, but Joe Public, excited about the location and where the schools are, and that just might pull them back a bit and say, let's look at the energy performance of the house. That is what we have here. We don't have EPCs though. So what we have is an intention across the nation. In 2009, this goes back to the Rudd era, and we really kicked some goals in terms of improving the energy performance of our buildings back then. And we had a COAG, Council of Australia Government's Declaration. We had 4 major measures to implement. 2 of them related to commercial buildings. That was the increase in stringency of energy performance for new commercial buildings, the Section J of the Building Code. It was higher levels of performance. Disclosure of commercial building performance in terms of it was originally at 2,000 meters squared of rentable area. Now it's down to 1,000. You have to have an energy disclosure, usually through something like the Neighbours system, which is developed out of New South Wales. Those were implemented. The other 2 proposals related to residential performance. One of them was the more stringent new homes, the 6-star standard, which was implemented 2010. Queensland, 5-star with a bit of a fudge if you've got an outdoor living area or some solar. Northern Territory went it alone and not really there. But in terms of that, we're there with the 6-star. The one measure that didn't get implemented was the disclosure for existing homes at point of sale or lease. So we haven't really quite got there. There was a lot of work done on this, a lot of good intention, a lot of a regulatory impact statement, which looks at the models. We had 4 options in terms of mandatory disclosure. Option 1, the Rolls-Royce standard, a full thermal assessment. Option 2, a thermal assessment, but not at the level of detail that you might find when you do these sorts of NATHERS types assessments. 3 and 4, online self-assessments. Talk about that in a minute. 5 and 6, just non-mandatory, sort of voluntary. The non-regulatory options would be more about educating the public. And to their credit, state governments do have programs to educate the Joe public about saving energy in the home and better performance for your house. And there's also schemes to help people access, and vulnerable people to access subsidies to change things, to save money. We have a problem that we don't have maybe the sort of resources to do it for everyone. So what we're looking for with mandatory disclosure, going back to the RIS, is what the options were. That is so detailed, I will fly right through it. But essentially, option 1, Rolls-Royce. Option 2, good. Option 3, you start to introduce something like online self-assessment. Well, do the people actually understand what it is they're assessing? So the problems with self-assessment are, you don't require an assessor, but it's impossible to apply quality assurance and so forth. And there would be almost like, would you call it, a conflict of interest. If you're assessing your own home and you're likely to sell it to someone, you might say, well, the home's good because I need to get a good tick. What happens next? In 2011, after the RIS, this is what we were told would happen next. Following the consultation period, the Australian government, state and territories will consider all stakeholder feedback. Then we'll prepare a decision RIS and we'll implement something. What will we implement? I was contemplating 2011, my daughter will turn 6 next 3 weeks from now. She wasn't even a thought in my little eye then, so that's quite a while ago. Because we have a federated system. We're a bunch of states, and states control building legislation. So who's been doing what? Well, back to the good old ACT, where I believe Stephen has done, as we know, done some research, and I think you live there. They've had a disclosure scheme for, well, more than 20 years. So when you go to the website of the real estate agent, you go looking for your house, you'll see amongst all the pretty pictures and the floor plans and that, you'll see an EER rating of here's 1.5. And in fact, you can see that there will be some kind of measure of what does that mean in terms of what is the cost or to run the house in an energy context. So ACT have got it. New South Wales have developed something, not so much in the mandatory disclosure scheme, but they are looking at a wider scheme to help people upgrade their homes. It's an energy saving scheme, and it's interesting when you go and look at this, these measures are the approved measures to access the scheme that you can do. So they're typically things that we see about modifying a window, replacing halogen downlights with LEDs. All of these things are the sort of the meat and bones of the scheme. What's interesting is what the Victorians have been doing in the last year and a half. They've developed what's called a residential energy scorecard. And they've first piloted with non-profit organizations. So they basically said, non-profit organizations, here's the tool. You can go out and do energy assessments on existing homes for Victorians. And what is an energy scorecard? And that's part of the reason I'm here to sort of talk to you about. Obviously, heating and cooling, lighting and hot water, and it covers other energy sources. And there is also a factoring of solar PV if you're generating electricity.
This video is a demonstration of the Victorian Residential Efficiency Scorecard tool. The scorecard provides an energy rating of a home based on the design and construction of the home and its fixed appliances. This means that you can compare ratings between homes and trust that the results represent the fixed features of your home, the things that drive your energy bills. To maintain quality, the use of the scorecard tool is restricted to trained assessors who have met the accreditation requirements and have undertaken scorecard training. The scorecard star rating reflects the cost of running the fixed appliances in a home. A high star rating means the home will use less energy and costs less to run than one with a lower star rating. The rating is on a basis of 1 to 10 stars. This house has a low efficiency, so it's rated 3 stars out of 10. We anticipate that this will be the average rating for houses across Victoria. The next section shows the relative amount of energy that's being used by the different features of the home. So heating is more than half of the consumption of the fixed elements of the home. Note that the scorecard only considers the fixed elements, so it's not concerned with items such as fridges and televisions. Rather, the relevant features are heating and cooling, lighting and hot water. So in this case, heating is 51% and cooling is 6%, which is relatively low as evaporative coolers are quite efficient. Lighting is relatively high in this case, as there are a number of halogens in this home. Hot water is high. We don't have a photovoltaic PV system in this case. Otherwise, the tool would show the percentage of fixed appliance energy cost that were offset by the generation from the PV system. The next section of the report shows the hot weather rating. This is a rating from not easy to very easy of how your home would perform in a period of extremely hot weather and whether it would be comfortable or not very comfortable. This rating is based on how the home performs without cooling. In this case, it's 2 out of 5, so it's not a particularly comfortable home in hot weather if the evaporative cooler isn't working. The tool also provides improvement options for the householder to consider that will help improve a home's hot weather performance. For example, improving ceiling and wall insulation and installing blinds on the east and west facing windows would help improve this home's hot weather rating. The next section shows the performance of the different elements of the home compared to others of the same type. In this case, the building shell is roughly in the middle ground of efficiency. The building shell considers things like the wall material, floor material, windows and curtains. It includes improvement options, installing insulation in the ceilings and walls, and installing double-glazed windows in this case. The next element is the heating. This ducted heater, again, is rated as middle performance. To improve, the householder could consider installing a new high-efficiency gas ducted furnace or a reverse cycle system, upgrading the ductwork or replacing it with high-efficiency gas or reverse cycle space heaters. The evaporative cooler, in this case, is very high efficiency, so there are no improvements needed. The lighting is rated as middle performance. This home currently has a number of halogens installed, and the improvement options are to replace those with LEDs. The hot water service in this case is again in the middle range for efficiency on the scale of 1 to 5. Improvements here would be to replace the shower heads with high-performance shower heads and upgrade the hot water system to a more efficient system. With renewable energy, we don't have a photovoltaic PV system in this home, but we could install one to improve the scorecard assessment. For any further queries regarding the scorecard program, please visit victorianenergysaver.vic.gov.au.
I did get involved in a little bit of the consultation around the Victorian scorecard. I was invited over to Victoria to have my tuppence worth, and it's been interesting, and that's a tool I think you can see that is going to be very useful, and it's already being of use. Just wrap up my presentation. Besides things like that Victorian scorecard, which is quite new, for a while we've had a sort of part of the neighbour system, the home, and you can go in. If you've got some energy bills, you can do a bit of an analysis on the home and you'll get a rating. But that brings me to something that my good friend David and I worked on with Martin Valesco, and that is the sort of, is it really valid to rate a home on the occupant behaviour using bill data? And it's really, you're in a trap there. If you're looking at the bill data, you're really looking at the behaviour of the person rather than the shell. So any of you like reading academic papers, this is something we wrote way back a couple of years ago. It's there if you want to delve into it, dive into it. We monitored houses in Lockhill Park, which are high performance. We monitored houses in Mawson Lakes. We used the data to look at the question of whether it really is valid to have a system of disclosure based on bills, and it's not really a great way of doing it. So I'll leave it to the Q&A system to flesh things out a bit more. So thank you for your time, and look forward to getting some good discussions with Stephen and myself. Thank you.